What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 152 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Volume 1. This is the first 6 issues of the ongoing series from the late 90s. This is by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill, and this is from America's Best Comics, which I don't know if that was a subsidiary of Wildstorm or if this was before the series was being done through Wildstorm. This might have been before Wildstorm. I know at one point this series was being done through that company, but this might have been part of Wildstorm. I'm not sure. But the premise of this is basically that you have all these different characters who come from different novels by different authors, and these guys are saying, what if all these characters existed in the same world? So on the cover here, you've got Alan Quatermain from King Solomon's Mines by H. Rider Haggard. You've got Mina Murray from Bram Stoker's Dracula. You have Captain Nemo from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. You have The Invisible Man from H.G. Wells's The Invisible Man. And then you have Dr. Jekyll / Mr. Hyde from Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And basically all these guys are joined together by the British government to serve the Empire, and they are having different adventures. And this is their first mission, if you will. And this is not an especially new premise. We have seen this premise explored a little bit before in prose. For example, yeah, I've got this book right here. This is The Other Log of Phileas Fogg. This is part of the Wall Newton universe by Philip Jose Farmer. He did a few novels that were basically doing this exact same thing, combining different characters from different disparate literary sources into one world. So it's not a very new premise, even in 1999, but this is one of the first times, if not the very first time, that we actually got to see this explored in comic books. This is really, as far as I can tell, one of the only times that we got to see this in comics, and specifically, I like The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen quite a bit more than I've liked it any other time that I see this premise explored. I would say that the Van Helsing movie with Hugh Jackman, that's kind of a really awful version of what The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is. And when the League books are done well, it is some of the best comics that you will ever read. Now, that's not to say that they are consistently good, but when they are good, they are very good. Now, this book right here, I would say my only problem with it is that the pacing is very deliberate. It takes a very long time for them to actually get to the plot of this particular volume. It spends almost 2/3 of the 6 issues that we have here getting the team together and recruiting them. There's one issue where they go to recruit Dr. Jekyll / Mr. Hyde, and then there's one issue where they go to recruit the Invisible Man. Both of those specifically, I think, could have been trimmed down, or we could have just started with those guys already being part of the team. And I understand that these guys, they really love working in their references to different literary sources, and not just these main guys on the cover, but you'll have references to The Murder at the Rue Morgue by Edgar Allan Poe. There's one of the characters from that story shows up here. You've got different characters from stories that, frankly, I've never even heard of before. They show up in this book. So these guys really love to work in their references, and I don't think that it gets too much in the way in this book. I will talk about that a little later on when we get to some of the other books, but I think with this one, it wouldn't have been a problem if we just started off with maybe one character getting recruited into the team, and then everyone else is already there. We start off with Alan Quatermain being brought into the team, and then we also have to go and get Dr. Jekyll, and then we have to go and get the Invisible Man, and then we get to start with their story. And by the time you get to the story, it's really interesting and it's worth the wait, but at the same time you're thinking, did we really have to wait that long? Couldn't we have started this story a little earlier in this book? I personally don't find it to be as much of a problem as other decompressed comics that have come since this series started. I feel like decompression in comic books really became a huge problem in the 2000s, and I think this kind of was doing that before it became really cool, but at the same time I think that this is much less problematic than, say, something by Brian Michael Bendis. Not to throw him under the bus, but I just did. So, in addition to the comic stuff that you get here, you also get a prose story that came out in chunks in each issue. And in this story, we get to see an adventure that Alan went on before he meets the rest of his teammates here. This is an adventure that he went on with, I believe, John Carter and the Time Traveler from H.G. Wells's story, The Time Machine. And that's a really fun story, too. That's something that Moore and O'Neill did starting here, and they did it in all of their League books, as far as I know, where they would have some kind of prose something that would accompany the actual comic book. And since this is the trade paperback and you're not getting it in issues, you get all that prose stuff together at the end of this book. But this is a really fascinating series, a really fascinating world that O'Neill and Moore are creating here, and this is really good. If you haven't read this, maybe you're only familiar with the movie and you didn't like the movie, please do yourself a favor and check out this book. It is much, much better than the movie. If you don't know if you'll like it, at least just give this one a shot, and you'll probably like it enough that you'll want to keep going with the next one anyway. So those are my thoughts on The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 1. I hope that you guys liked this book, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow to talk about another book. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.